Hello, and we are live. Hello, everyone. It's Georgie here from Blink, coming to you live from our London studio. I'm very excited to be the therapist today for couples therapy. In not too long a time, I'm going to introduce our fabulous I'm going to say, therapists who are going to be having therapy today. We've got Chuck and Jennifer who will introduce themselves shortly. But welcome, everybody. I hope you're well today. Let me know in the chat, where are you joining us from? I can see from all over the place, really. We've got India, we've got Wales, Colorado, South Africa. Greetings from the Netherlands. Hello, Montreal, Brighton. Hello, everyone. Welcome, welcome. My name is Georgie. I'm from the Blink team. I'm very excited to be the therapist today. Got my extra clunky therapist glasses on, ready for this session all around how internal comms and HR's relationship can be nurtured and saved. But hello, everyone. I hope you're having a great day. So let's get started. I would like to formally introduce our speakers today to our couples therapy session. I'm going to hand over to them shortly, but please know that you've got a chat to contribute to. We love that these become more like community style events, so please feel free to ask our leaders today any questions. Please chime in, please contribute. It makes the event far more interactive when you're not able to directly talk to us. And there's also an official Q&A section, so if you have got an official question, we might miss it if it's in the chat, so head over to Q&A and we can make sure we get to those today. But a big fat welcome. I'm very excited, if you can't tell, to be the therapist today between these two. But Chuck, hello, and could you introduce yourself and tell us where you're joining this therapy session from today?
Yes, thanks for having your session here today, Georgie. My name is Chuck Ghost, founder of Icology, which is the community for internal communicators. And I'm coming to you from Atlanta, Georgia today, but I did see someone in the chat mention they were from the Bahamas. So if anybody's open for a trade, I would be happy to switch spots.
That sounds good. Hi, Chuck, and thank you so much for joining today's therapy. And Jennifer, hello, and where are you joining us from?
I'm joining from Cincinnati, Ohio, so I'll trade with maybe Wales. I'd like to go there. So.
Oh, yes. I thought you were going to say London. I was like, do not trade with London.
I was like, so I am the CEO of Unbridled Talent, which is my own company, and Disrupt HR, which, to follow Chuck's example, is the community for forward-thinking HR leaders around the world.
Glorious. Thank you. And I hope you're all in agreement. We've got an absolutely killer combo today to step into the room to have a bit of therapy. But I hope you're all in agreement. We're going to have a bit of fun today with this, play on having live therapy, and that you've all maybe felt how this relationship could be nurtured, could be amazing, could be better, could be saved. But to kick us off today, I actually just wanted a bit of a poll to understand what brings you here today. And we've got some options here just so that we can get a sense of you all and where you're joining us from. So let us know in that live poll that's popping up. Now, before we get into our therapy session, you two, I want you to be open and honest, and we're going to start by really talking about our feelings, okay? And a good way to get started with that is, you're coming from very different perspectives, and I think it's important to maybe draw, right? Because everybody loves forced fun. If you've been on a Blink webinar, you know how this goes. I would like you to draw an emoji. And Jennifer, I would like you to draw an emoji that best represents HR. And Chuck, I would like you, or all things people. And Chuck, I would like you to draw an emoji that all, represents all thing internal comms. Now, I did set you this homework before your session today. Have you both done your homework?
I have.
I might have been miscommunicated or heard differently, but yes, I have done my homework.
Oh, and it's already started. Here we go. Okay, Chuck, I'm coming to you first. Show me your emoji and talk me through it.
Yep. So the emoji I drew, I thought was best really described the relationship between internal comms and HR. And so I attempted to draw a tornado. And the reason for that tornado is I feel like we oftentimes internal comms and HR, we're just going round and round and round and round and round, and destruction is in our path when we're not aligned. So that's why the tornado came to mind for me.
Amazing. Is that potentially a very chaotic start to this session today? But I really like it. And it sounds like Jen has said
Let's hope so.
So here we go.
All right.
Jen, I'm coming to you next.
Also, I drew what I see the relationship as, and I'm already feeling less than because I don't have the technology tools that internal comms has. I had to use paper and pen. So this is HR because we feel like we're being attacked by internal comms often in the relationship.
Yeah.
And it's adversarial, and there is a wrestling emoji. So that's what this is.
Glorious. Thank you both. And it's a really strong start. I feel like you've both been able to be honest with me today in terms of how you're feeling and maybe where you're coming from. And I would love to know from everyone joining us today, are you joining us from a tornado perspective? Please put tornado in the chat. Or are you joining us from a attack ninja perspective? Let us know. Are you coming to us from an IC perspective or an HR perspective? It'd be great to know. Let's see. Oh, we've got quite a few tornadoes. Lots of tornadoes. Wrestling with the tornadoes. Good one. Oh, amazing. Thank you, everyone. Great to see a nice mix.
Oh, yeah. Wrestling tornadoes. That is an interesting visual there.
Yeah, I mean, that feels like a plot to a movie, right? Heard it here first. All right, super. Well, I think what I'd like to start today's session with is clearly there's some things to unpick here between the two of you. We don't like the emojis necessarily that you've drawn. These are not supportive, kind, fruitful necessarily drawing. So how should we change that? And I think the key thing I'd like to start with is really defining your relationship. What should this relationship be like? And specifically, I want to think about employee experience. So with that hat on, I want to understand, where do HR and comms tend to align? Have you got some similarities? Have you got some, mutual grounds there? Or is there areas where you think that you've got mutual ground and actually that you don't? And Jennifer, I'm coming to you first with that question.
I think we both have the same objective, that we want to have effective communications with our employees. We want them to feel like they understand the reasoning behind decisions. If it's something that we're communicating like that, they need to understand what they need to do. So being clear and having effective communication, I think we're both on the same page with that. I think where we often out of alignment is both in timing and how the message is delivered. We need to make sure from an HR perspective that things are compliant, that we've had legal review on everything, that it's very clear and, step by step. And I tend to see my internal comms partners often want to talk more about storytelling and engagement and campaigns. And we just need to get the message out, and people need to hear it.
Chuck, what are you hearing from Jennifer, and, what have you got to add there?
Well, I think that as we know, communications is critical, but I think the common element that we share is that our eyes are all pointed inward. We're all focused on the employee. That's the person that both HR and internal comms cares about. That's our focus. I think it's the why is sometimes where we get misaligned, where I think from a communicator standpoint, we look at HR as like policies and rules and guidelines and all of that. And to Jennifer's point, we're thinking campaigns and stories, and there should be some alignment there, but often we're coming at that employee from very different perspectives. Right.
And even in your comments there, I can see some alignment, or misalignment, should I say. Could I have maybe an idea from one of you where this common ground is beyond the audience or the people? What were some themes there where we can find some common ground together? Jennifer, what do you think?
We both have the employees, I think, at the center of our actions. We need to, serve them well. We need to communicate well to them. So we're definitely aligned on that.
And Chuck,
I think we both have strong voices in our organizations, but I don't think we always recognize how strong of a voice that we have and the influence and the reach that our two groups have inside companies, big and small. I think the impact and the influence is widespread, far beyond ourselves, which I think is pretty unique compared to a lot of departments inside companies.
Yes. And it's great that, there's some common ground here, guys. We've got that to work on. So that's always really exciting in therapy. I'd like to understand if you've ever really experienced in your relationship a communication breakdown, and what did that really look like from your seat? Have you got any examples to share there? Chuck, I'm going to come to you first this time.
I mean, I see it a lot of times when it comes to Jennifer's point, and this is kind of the comms crutch. This is our Achilles heel all the time, is we feel like we're brought in too late. We feel like we're not brought in early on. And so I think that the disconnects that often happen is, this isn't just pointing to HR, this is across the spectrum, but that the comms teams, internal employee experience, whatever there are, feel like they're not involved early enough, and that too much has been done for us to actually have a positive impact. The partnership doesn't feel like it's there. And I would say no different. We should be pointing fingers at ourselves. There's a lot of things that we are actively communicating that we're probably not going out and getting HR's point of view on, or HR's expertise on, because of that misalignment that we talked about. Sometimes we're going about it on our own, when in fact, if we partnered, the impact would be exponential.
Yeah, and I think that word partnership is really key, isn't it? Because you're expecting something, but then are you behaving that way as well? Absolutely. Jennifer, how about you? Any, examples, experience, sort of core breakdowns in this relationship?
Sure. I can think of one in the U.S. in particular that every year we have to do an annual open enrollment, which is, again, it happens every year in the fall, like typically for most companies. And internal comms really should know that that's coming, but they also need to understand that we're actively working for months behind the scenes to finalize what the new plans will look like, to get legal approval, to get all the approvals internally for what's going to be done. And a lot of times that happens at the last minute, but we still need to communicate it effectively to employees. So when I finally am able to say to internal comms, hey, we're ready to go forward. We need to create messaging. We need to get this out to people because we have to have them enrolled by this date. There's often a lot of pushback that, well, why didn't you bring us in sooner? And there's really no point in bringing them in sooner because we don't have everything finalized, reviewed, correct until it's time to hit the go button.
Can I jump in with something, Georgie? Can I jump in with something? Something that happened in the chat. Somebody left a comment that I want to respond to, that they're like, yes, they agreed with me. Like, comms is always being brought in at the 11th hour. We're not brought in soon enough. I think it's important for us to look back and like, why are we being brought in late? Why are we being brought in last minute? Why aren't, whether it's HR or other teams, why are they not thinking to bring us in? It's easy to point fingers at them, but I think we need to ask the question, why aren't they thinking of us? And so how do we change that? How do we build stronger partnerships so they do stop to think of us and bring us in early and see us as that valued partner?
And what's your thoughts to Jennifer's example then, especially around open enrollment, and, she's had that pushback and she's feeling, well, this was an appropriate time because I didn't have the information before that. And, there's been some comments around someone else feeling that when they've said, hang on, involve me earlier, and they felt there's a bit of reluctantness or defensiveness. What could be a good example?
I think that's where true communication comes in, to say, hey, we don't have that information yet. As soon as we do have it, we know it might be late. We know that comms might not come in when you want it, but it might be late. But that's why we need you to step in and help. And I think even that advanced communication, just letting people know, setting expectations, it's not that anyone's being shielded from that content. It's not that anything's being left out. They just don't have it. It's no different than even the power of saying, I don't know. That's better than not saying anything at all. And so I think just having those open communication lines, to Jennifer's point, being in the U.S., open enrollment every year, count it like clockwork. No one should be surprised by this. So as comms, rather than wait to react to HR, let's proactively ask them in June, July, August, September, be a pain in their butt. Be the one in their ear saying, because that shows your interest. That shows, because it's all about that employee. That's what it comes back to. We're trying to create a better experience for that one employee out there, not the entire company all days, but like, how are we changing the experience for that one employee around this one thing? I think the more we can be proactive and instead of reactive, then that puts it on them. If they want, then they have to include us because we're basically in their ear all the time.
Hi. Yeah. Jennifer, how are you feeling about that? Because obviously, you know, in a people role, you wear so many hats. So there's a lot of stakeholders you're having to work with. And obviously, I understand that in internal comms as well. But to Chuck's point, you know, if someone wants to actively pester you to try and be more proactive, how would that work with the relationship from your standpoint?
I guess I just want to make sure that, you know, internal comms or anyone in the organization understands that I'm really trying to manage your time or help manage your time. Why communicate with you in June when we're still in discussions with brokers and we're still talking as a leadership team about, you know, any changes that we want to make? If I start sharing up front with you, here's what we're thinking. And then, you know, 2 weeks before the communication deadline, we actually aren't doing anything like that because of budget or because of legal constraints, et cetera. Communicating as we go along seems like I'm wasting time for someone else. So I'm really trying to be considerate by bringing you in when the messaging is final or when we need to think about messaging on what the final piece is. And, you know, I suppose I could communicate, you know, more in advance, but it's more about I'm trying to protect your time and be a good partner, good team member.
It sounds like you're both being very British, which is being overly considerate of the other person, which can obviously, you know, feel if your intentions are from a good place, but maybe aren't coming across that way. You know, if Chuck, you're saying, well, my intentions are good because I'm trying to help. But Jennifer, you're saying, well, my intentions are good because I'm trying to conserve your time. I think that's where it helps sometimes having very direct communication. It's like we're both on the same page. We've both got the shared objectives. You don't necessarily always have the luxury of having that direct conversation with that person or stakeholder. But I think this is a really good place to start in terms of really defining a relationship. And it's a great example, Jennifer, you brought to the table then. I can see we've had lots of comments around this battle internally as well. I would like to...
I think it's not, actually, I don't think it's even saying that it's a battle. It's not it should never be a battle. It shouldn't ever come to that. And I think that when at the times when it's felt like a battle, to me, back when I used to run internal comms at GM and Rolls-Royce, so large manufacturing organizations, large frontline employees.
Yeah.
I felt like HR, and this is not an indictment of anybody that worked at HR or GM at Rolls-Royce during those times. However, I felt like HR was there for the company and internal comms felt like we were there for the employee. And I think that simple divide, even though it was our perception, I'm not saying that was reality, even though that was our perception, that automatically put us at odds. I actually felt at times like I was in competition with HR, that I cared more about the employee than HR did. HR cared more about the company. Internal comms cared more about the employee. Again, my perception, not reality. But I think even just those individual things, I think we forget how often, if a manager feels that way, how likely it is for their employees then to act and behave that same way. So then it becomes viral throughout teams, that it's not just us versus them, it's us versus us. And that's when, unfortunately, the battle happens.
And I think that's really beautifully, Chuck, giving me the perfect segue to my next question, which is I really want to get to the bottom of this. Like, you know, we've got some examples here of maybe where it's broken down and actually forgetting that you've got this mutual ground. And where do you think this partnership started to genuinely break down? Because we started this conversation by saying we've both got the same goal, or we've both got the same audience, we've both got the employees at the actual center of what we're doing. So I just want to drill down into that a bit more. And Jennifer, what do you think? Why did this partnership potentially start to break down, you know, in real life? What did that look like? And like, if we get to the root cause there, maybe that could help.
I think, you know, what Chuck just said really does touch on the fact that HR, we're very sensitive, or at least I am, to that, you know, common refrain that HR represents the company and not the employees. I feel like HR really done well is when we understand that we serve influence throughout the whole company, both internal and external. So the company and the employee and the customer and people who are familiar with our brand. And a lot of other departments, whether it's marketing or operations or sales or internal comms, they feel like we don't have ownership or the ability to represent the employees because, hey, that's our job. Well, we're kind of stuck in the middle in that sense, in that we're trying to balance the needs of everyone. Yes, we have to protect the company and represent the company and make sure things are legal and compliant. But that's not all that we do. But a lot of people, especially people who have bad experiences with HR, they just say, oh, HR's job is just to protect the company. You can't trust them. Don't ever go to HR because they'll just do you wrong because you're the when really we're trying to make sure that employees are treated fairly, that they're communicated well with, et cetera. So when a department, has that mindset about us, whether it's internal comms saying we represent the employee and HR represents the company, if that's their perception, that tends to create friction because I view my role as representing the right side in all. And then maybe that's a little God complex, but, I feel like in HR, we're trying to serve the needs of everyone. And by doing that, we often get nobody happy. The company says, well, you're just listening to employees, stop, listening to employees, do what's right. And the employees say, hey, treat me like a human, hear my needs, don't just treat me by the rules.
Yeah. And Chuck, what's your take?
Along those lines, I think Jennifer is going on something. I don't think that HR ever gets to feel like they're the good guys in it. That, as Jennifer just described, they're in the middle. If they're making one side happy, they're disappointing another side.
Yeah.
Feel like that, and so they never. And I know that this is, I guess, a common ground. If the two groups, HR and IC, coming together, is both sides feel disrespected. Don't feel like they get enough recognition. Don't feel like they get enough value. And hearing Jennifer described as they never get to feel that time where when they do a really good job, it's because that's the job, and so it just gets done. They never really get to feel like they're the good guy. Does that feel accurate, Jennifer?
Yeah, I just saw one of the comments in the chat roll by where somebody said, isn't it HR's job to protect the company? I feel like it's everyone's job to protect the company. Why does HR get that responsibility hat for making sure that people do the right things? Leaders of all types, employees of all types should be making sure that we're representing the company well. And I don't know where in history, I guess I know where. There are HR leaders who just side with compliance and rules, et cetera, and they do human resources a disservice because it's much more than that when done well. I think we often get tagged with, we're the scapegoat when people can't do things. Maybe they've never even talked to HR about it, but it's not uncommon for a supervisor or manager to say, HR won't let us do that. I think we have a real chip on our shoulder about that. And so anytime someone, again, whether it's internal comms, kind of approaches us from the standpoint of, hey, we're here to take care of the employees and we're trying to soften your messaging, or we're trying to take out some of this legal mumbo jumbo, I'd much rather see us work together on how we can get the legal mumbo jumbo and the compliance stuff communicated effectively so that people get the entire message and they understand what the right things are to do for the company, and also that fits with what's best for them.
And it's been the function has been through a huge change. When I first joined the workplace, and my dad was teaching me all about the different functions, he referred to HR as human remains. He was like, they don't look after you, I won't get a response. And sorry, Dad, named shamed you now. But the functions changed a lot. How I talk to him about it now is like, it's this team that are want to deliver a great experience, and they can be a great sounding board, a great business partner, and that blows his mind. He's obviously in his 70s, and that just shows the sheer change of that function and the perception as well over time. And I think that hasn't helped the relationship when the function itself has been through a huge journey of perception change externally and internally.
Well, I guess I don't know the history of HR, but it feels like it might have started back hearing my dad talk about like the personnel department. Like, yes. was that the origins of HR? And then you look at like the origin, like it feels like HR in whatever you name calling has been around longer than, say, what we now call internal comms. But there again, I still think there's that the partnership is stronger because we have the same focus. Again, we're just coming at it from different levels. And there's something in the chat that I think is interesting to talk about, where HR gets to do communication, but communication doesn't get to do HR. So lean on each other's strengths, lean on each other, what you're each there for, what your expertises are.
Definitely. Yeah, that's a great point, Chuck. I just kind of a quick check-in. Is everyone still feeling like we're friends? Is this therapy session going okay? Not too much.
Can I make a comment? I love the chat, by the way. Thank you for everybody contributing to the chat. You're adding so much depth to this. And I think the comment that was just made, oh shoot, it just jumped, but somebody made a comment about order takers. We need to be more strategic. We can't be order takers. I would love to know what job people have out there where you're not ever taking orders. Ask your CEO if they take orders from anyone. And if you have a board of directors, they do. So we all take orders from someone out there. So yes, we are taking orders, but how are we adding value to that? How are we adding our own expertise, our own lens, our own thoughts to those orders? So I hear that now a lot in the internal comm space. Jennifer, I don't know if you hear that's much in the HR world, where it's like, we're not order takers, we're oracles. And I'm like, I hear what you're saying, but we all work for someone. We all take orders. So yes. Oh yes. Somebody mentioned they heard it on the podcast. Yes. We all take orders. Let's be clear.
Jennifer, do you agree?
Is that the same conversation in HR, Jennifer?
I don't know that we view it as order takers in the sense that people ask us to do sometimes impossible things. I want to fire this employee, but I've never told you that they're not performing. I've never told them they're not performing. I've never communicated to them what they need to do differently in order to keep their job, but HR make it happen. And so sometimes we get asked to pull things out of the hat, which again puts us in the position where if we do that, then people say, oh, they just protected the company again, or they did that because the company would benefit, and the employee, if they have a voice, then they're going to tell everybody that they were done wrong, and HR gets blamed and not the manager, right? So I think we feel like we're just often asked to pull rabbits out of hats, to do things, because somebody wants to do it when there may be a clearly communicated policy or a law or a reason, or sometimes just common sense that this is not what we should be doing if we want to be a company that treats people like humans, if you want to be a good leader, et cetera. So that creates a tension a lot of times when maybe bad leaders or even good leaders sometimes who want to do ridiculous things come to HR and basically say, poof, make it happen. And I'm going to disassociate from it because now it's in your lap. And I feel like we get, maybe instead of order takers, we get dumped on.
I would say that internal comms feels the same way. They absolutely feel the same way where things just get laid out there.
I see somebody in the chat said, we get dumped on too.
Oh, yeah. Thank you so much for the chat. I feel like hopefully this is a safe space, everyone. We're all having a bit of therapy this afternoon or this morning, depending where you are. I want to have just one comment, and this is for everybody that's on the session today, and Chuck and Jennifer. If this is a safe space, yes, it's being recorded and available on demand, but for right now, it's a safe space. If you could voice one frustration that you'd like to share with the other person today without judgment, what would that be? And I would love to know in the chat as well. You've got a safe space to share one frustration with either HR if you're in internal comms, or with internal comms if you're in HR. What would that be? And Jennifer, I'm coming to you first.
I think it would be to understand, again, it's what we've been talking about, to understand that our roles really are aligned in the sense that we want effective communication, but that HR is trying to serve a lot of different masters. Yes, we do have to review to make sure it's compliant with our policy. Yes, we do have to review often with legal to make sure that everything is worded in a certain way. And then when we turn that information or bring internal comms in to, help us communicate that effectively, they want to start changing things when we've already gone through all these hoops. And then we have to go back to those people and say, well, internal comms wants to say it this way. And then legal says, no, you can't say. We become that person or department in the middle. And I don't think there's enough appreciation for how difficult that role could be. So I'd really like for my partners in internal comms to appreciate that we often feel like we're pulled between all these different masters, where at least to me, it feels like internal comms has a singular goal of effective communication to all employees, which is great. I share that goal, but I also have to serve all these other masters as well.
Thank you, Jennifer. I think, was it Bethany's comment? We listen and we don't judge. So true. Chuck, what is your one frustration that you'd like to air before we get onto a more positive trajectory?
Yes, I was gonna thank Bethany. She stole my line. I was gonna be like, we listen and we don't judge. Yes, absolutely. I'm gonna be much more pointed at this frustration. And apologies for anyone else who's listened to the podcast. You've heard the same frustration. Enough with the dress code policies, HR. Just stop. We are all adults. Like people know how to dress. People don't need to be told how to show up. If it's a one-up, maybe let's expand the rant a little bit more. We don't need a policy because one person did something wrong. That's a conversation with that one person. We tend to have policies about policies when people just want to show up to work, be themselves. Like, I think that's where if I'm looking at not from the IC standpoint, but the employee standpoint to HR, be like, no, have my back here. I want to wear shorts to work. I want to wear sandals to work, whatever. I can still work. That's cool. Like, that's fine. Whatever. You don't need to over police this stuff. We're all adults. So let's.
Well, that illustrates my point. How many times has internal comms received a call or an email from a manager that says, I need you to come out here and talk to this employee whose shorts are too short? Why me? I mean, how many times have I said that to manager? Why does HR have to communicate that message? And so, yeah, after you've been called out to talk to somebody about their attire by someone else, 6 times, maybe you write a policy that just says, hey, everybody, this is the policy. The shorts have to be 8 long and 2 inches above your knees, because I don't want to get that call anymore. And I think that's a frustration from HR. Yeah, there are bad policies, and I personally am not a fan of dress codes, but I understand why they exist. It's because of not just the one time, but the 10 times you get the call where you are the one that has to go out and communicate. Your body odor is bothering your coworkers. Well, wait, you just showed up out of nowhere, HR. Who told you? Well, it was one of these people that doesn't want to talk to you directly. So you get frustrated that sometimes policies come out of our frustration. Yes. We're just trying to make it easier for everybody.
Yeah, trying to be more.
This is a really, I'm gonna internalize this point that someone made about, somebody made about I'm trying to scroll through the chat and follow. There's a reason why signs in the restrooms tell people to wash their hands. That's true. People that wash their hands don't need a sign.
Yes,
to wash their hands. Some people apparently need that social reminder. However, there's not. Do people still put posters up about dress code? I don't know. Dress codes are just a thing for me. I'm gonna let it go. I'm not gonna blame HR for them. But I think there's oftentimes, and maybe this is the organizational side of it, of where we create policies because we don't want to have a simple conversation with someone. We tend to over policy things instead of just saying to someone, hey, next time, choose something else. Or maybe what they're wearing is fine, but their managers all trying to look for reasons to fire them. These are the things, Jennifer, we think about HR. We think like you're in cahoots and you're trying to just fire people who violate a policy, and you all cheers each other when layoffs happen. And we know that's not the case, but yes.
So I feel like we talk about dress code for a lot. I mean, there's a great divide in the chats whether, no shorts are too short or, but I agree. I think it and these sorts of things can ultimately be very divisive, and these are the things we're here to unpick today. But I want to talk about building trust in a partnership, and especially between these two functions. And the word trust has been thrown around, the word partnership has been thrown around, but I think I would love some advice now for everybody that's dialed in today. Is what are some rituals, methods, or working agreements that help teams stay better aligned, help Jennifer, your team, and Chuck, your team, stay aligned? I'm happy to keep the dress code example, or if you've got any other examples to share. But I think let's get into some of the positives now, some advice, because it seems like there's a lot of people that can relate to a lot of this. So let's get into the good stuff in building that trust, building that partnership, and what are some golden nuggets to help build that? Chuck, I'm going to come to you first with that one.
I think the phrase that comes to mind for me is a very simple phrase, and it's anytime you're starting a new project, a campaign, perhaps a new policy, Jennifer, I don't know. It's the ask yourself, who else needs to know? Who else needs to know? If we're looking to build partnerships and we're starting some kind of project or campaign or whatever it is, just simply asking yourself, who else needs to know? And not just ask yourself, but ask others. Who else needs to know? Because that's going to start to build that partnership. That's going to start to build that trust of bringing people in earlier, having people get involved, having people have their buy-in early on, having that more inclusive effort. I think just that asking yourself that simple phrase will automatically start to fix that.
That's a good tip. Thank you, Chuck. Jennifer, would you agree? And have you got any more to add? Any rituals to start rebuilding this trust and having a good foundation?
Sure. I think obviously we need to communicate more and better with each other. There's probably no other department that internal communications needs to communicate with more than HR in terms of what we're sharing with employees. And HR, again, good. I always say good HR because there's plenty of bad HR. So you have examples where they don't do that. I'm talking about good HR. Good HR does start the year with a plan of what are our big initiatives, what are the big projects that we're going to be working on, open enrollments in the fall, but what are we going to be doing in the spring? Do we have some policies that we're working on, et cetera? So I would like to see, and I find it helpful when there's a regular cadence of meetings. Maybe it's the department heads, maybe it's a few people on the team whether it's a monthly meeting or maybe you have a monthly meeting that's quick and then you have a quarterly meeting where it's more of a planning, maybe a Slack channel or a Teams channel now with the technology we have available where we can be putting out there, here's what we're looking at, or here's this new thing that just got dropped on our desk. We're not ready to communicate it yet. We've got to do a lot of research. We've got to run this through legal, but I just want to put this on radar. And as long as everybody can keep things confidential, which again, I think HR struggles with that often. We do have a lot of confidential things that either aren't ready to be communicated or maybe they won't materialize or maybe there are some sensitive issues. And so once we start sharing that with other departments, then when somebody leaks it gets out, we get blamed. HR let this out of the bag. So as long as everybody can understand the confidentiality of a lot of things HR is dealing with, I'd like to see regular monthly communications, quarterly kind of planning sessions, an editorial calendar where, internal comms has it on their calendar that, okay, we'd love to know in June what we're going to do for open enrollment in October, but we're probably not going to know until September. So let's put this on the September calendar. So we're actually planning and working together. Yep. And understanding, again, that's the opportunity for me to say, here's what we're thinking about. And internal comms can say, well, I understand that's not finalized yet, but here's what we'll need from you if that does get finalized so that I can also be planning what I need to gather to make your job easier.
Definitely. And I think the key here is rather than, this example, Jennifer, you've given and Chuck is less it feeling transactional and more like a genuine collaboration, a genuine partnership. And I know it's difficult when everyone is so busy and running around. But I think that's key for it to feel like a more genuine and partnership. I'd love to know an example, from experience if either of you could share of what like a dream collaboration, with each other could or has looked like, because I think, a more practical example for anyone joining today's therapy session would be great. So have you got an example or maybe an aspirational example? Chuck, coming to you first. Oh, Chuck, live event.
Sorry.
You're on mute.
I think my example would be very aspirational. I think it's where, say, for example, inside a company, you've got your CHRO and your chief communications officer, and those two are in partnership. Those two set the tone for how the teams then work. And again, within CHROs and within CCOs, it's not just employee-focused HR, and it's not just internal comms, but I think they set the tone. Others follow what their leaders, what they see them doing. And so I think having those two roles at the table, because often what happens, and this is just coming from the comms side of things, comms reports into the CHRO or comms reports into the CMO, and then therefore feels a bit disadvantaged in that because it's not CHRO, it's not CCO, it's CHRO. And so HR takes that pole position. But I think having the leadership set the tone for what not just good partnership looks like, but here's what great partnership looks like. That should be the goal. Good should never be the goal. Great should be the goal because you're not always going to get to your goal. You're not always going to get there.
Yep.
But great would be the goal. So set this tone, set the stage for what great looks like, and then model those behaviors. As soon as employees see their leaders behaving differently, it's invalid. The partnership starts to fall apart. You would like to think that it can be built up from the bottom, and perhaps it can and should. But ultimately, you need your leaders to model that behavior and that partnership. And to Jennifer's point, too, around the confidentiality and integrity, as soon as that breaks, so is the trust, so is the partnership. So we all should be bound by those same standards.
I love that. It also sounds so finite. We should be bound by these, yes, in true partnership.
And then we are knighted, and then there it is done. Yes.
Yeah. I'm thinking like blood brothers, but sure. Jennifer, coming to you next, have you got an example of this? Have you got an aspirational one? Like what does or could a dream collaboration look like? Any examples or, the dream state?
Yeah, I'll give an aspirational one just because of some of the pain that I've experienced in the past. I think when there's a difficult message that needs to be communicated, so let's say there's a restructuring, a layoff, we're selling a division or something, and so HR and internal comms maybe has worked together on how that's going to be communicated internally. What I'd like to see from internal comms is much more support on then how do we as HR respond to the people that are come and direct their anger or their frustration or their, whatever it is on us. I know I worked with a CEO once where, I kept coming to him with issues that people were raising to me, and he in frustration said, why do people go to you and not their manager? And to your, I believe it was your father who said it's human remains. And I said, because they don't see human resources over the door. They see help resources. So when they have an issue, they don't think often, they should, but they don't think often to go to their manager. They think, I'm going to go complain to HR, or I'm going to go tell HR, or I'm going to get HR involved. A good HR would, if where appropriate, direct them back to their manager, but they're often the first point where the hit occurs. The anger is often brought to HR. I don't understand this is brought to HR. So internal comms can really help human resources once the message is communicated. Okay, now what are all the points? What are some scenarios that people might come to you with? Here's some messaging and some talking points that you need to internalize and make real, not so that you're just repeating talking points, but do you agree with this answer, HR? And can you say that and believe it and feel it? And when is it appropriate for you to send them back to someone else? Here's the different points of contact for these types of scenarios. That's where I think partnership could really be built out when that shows me that you're understanding, okay, great communication happened. We communicated it really well. Thanks, internal comms. But now there's the communication.
Boy, it doesn't sound like you're very thankful there, Jennifer. That sounded a little sarcastic.
There's the communication after the communication that if you could help us with that. And again, understand everybody loves to hate on HR, but we are the help resources when they're mad, angry, frustrated as well. So help us do that part of the job as well.
I think I want to comment on something that she shared, Georgie, which I guess I've never really thought about this. But as communicators, we want to say we want to hear, let's get comms involved. Let's get comms needs to be involved. And now's our chance. We're going to get involved. When you hear, let's get HR involved. It sounds like something bad's about to go down. I don't know why that is, but it just doesn't sound good when you hear we need to get HR involved.
Yeah. And I think as well, Jennifer, to your point, sometimes other team stakeholders, maybe in internal comms, don't have that context. And so when they're feeling, HR's wading in or involved, it's wham wham and not, oh, I just want to give you some more context that we've been having a lot of people come to us and say XYZ, and sharing some of those frustrations and context, can really help build that trust and partnership as well. And sometimes, again, it can feel very transactional rather than, I just need to give you an update. Here's where things are. Here's where the team's frustrated. Here's, XYZ. And I think both departments being maybe more transparent about the good, the bad, the ugly can really help set more context and therefore help maybe a healthier partnership as well.
Maybe there again, maybe internal comms can help HR with a little internal campaign of saying, here's what happens when you get HR involved. Like, here's why you want HR to get involved. Like, there's balloons and things and all kinds of sparkles and glitter goes off. It's not doom and gloom,
We need a rebrand for HR badly.
You know what? We both, here's a common ground. We both could use a bit of a rebrand out there, Jennifer. That is a fantastic point.
That said, HR takes the blames and internal comms is the scapegoat. So HR's a bad guy. IC is always.
Well, that's both playing a little bit of the victim status, which people like to do. Like,
I might get my little violin out. Yep.
Yeah, it's not all bad all the time.
But it sounds like this rebrand theory, or like this internal PR, I've seen a lot of comments in the chats around, can we not use this term? We shouldn't be using that term, because sometimes we default to use certain language and we're not even doing ourselves a good service there as well. So yeah, I think, that could be an obvious collaboration for teams to get going on a bit of a internal PR campaign. I'd like to get a bit more practical, and, I'm coming to you and, we're here to air our grievances. We're here to, feel like we're in a safe space. But I'd like to know, what's one thing that you would tell people today? Like, what's one small change that you could do today to start making a difference tomorrow? Because sometimes we have these conversations and it does feel a bit, whoa, how do I get started with this? This is insurmountable. The teams are so big, or I don't know how to collaborate. So, Jennifer, I'm going to come to you first. I just would like to know, what's your advice? What's one small change that somebody could start today to start to make a difference and help this relationship tomorrow?
I think, at some point in my career, I learned this probably through some hard knocks. And then I went through an executive coaching certification training where I learned it much better, that I am a better partner when I come into discussions prepared to ask questions. Not just to say, here's what needs to be done, boom, boom, boom. But, I need to communicate what I need or what I'm planning to do, but then I need to be prepared to say, and what do you need from me in order to make that work for you? Is there anything that, are you receiving any pushback from my team? I need to think about, what are the questions that I can ask to really understand your position from internal comms, what you need from me, what you're frustrated with about my team, what's worked well. So rather than just, here's the dump of what we need and the timing and call me if you need anything, I need to be much more cognizant to ask good questions about, do you fully understand? Are we on the same page, et cetera?
Great. And Chuck, how about you? What's your one small change someone could start with?
Well, it's not to give away short shorts, like was mentioned in the chat. It's not. That's not going to work. And then also to point someone's at, yes, this is not IT's therapy session. IT can have their own therapy session with comms. IT can have their own therapy session with HR. We all need therapy out there. This is HR and IC. I think for me, it often comes down to that one-on-one relationship. And so if you're in comms, simply go to an HR partner. Maybe it's somebody you've worked with in the past. Perhaps maybe it's someone you haven't. And just simply ask, like, hey, how can I help? What problem can I help solve? To Jennifer's point, make sure they know that you're asking questions and not questioning. Because I think so often people get onslaughted with questions. They feel like they're being doubted or there's not trust there, when really you want to understand. So I think being very clear with, hey, I'm asking because I want to understand. How can I help? What's a problem I can solve? What's your team challenged with this week? Because I think, again, that's where comms can jump in and help out. We can play a bit of the superhero here. I was thinking as we were talking, I don't know if there's any other superhero fans in the chat, but there's these very obscure DC superheroes called the Wonder Twins. They were largely not effective separate, but they would come together and they would claim fists. And what they turned into wasn't helpful. One would turn into an animal and one would turn into a body of water, which didn't really make a lot of sense the whole time. However, how can we come together? How can we power each other up to then go be superheroes inside the organization. Yeah, Wonder Twins activate. Thank you, Carla, for that. Yes, absolutely.
I've got some homework to do. I need to research the Wonder Twins. Chuck, thank you. What I'm going to do now
you'll be a little disappointed. I'm just going to warn you.
You've oversold it. Okay. Yeah. Classic internal comms. I'm kidding.
Wow. From the therapist.
I thought it was a safe space.
Wow. We don't judge, right?
Chuck, remember, no judgment. We've had so many questions. So I do have one more question for you both, but I'm conscious that we should get through some of these because there's been a lot of questions in the chat and we've tried to keep an eye on that. But if you've got a question that you would like our panelists to answer today, please plop it in the Q&A. If we don't get to it today, we'll try our best to after the event. But I'm going to dive in. Question number one is, in your opinion, should IC have a say in what communications are ultimately shared? Or if HR wants it, they get it, period. Jennifer, I'm going to ask you that question.
I'm going to argue with the framing of the question that the HR is basically like, this is my ball and you can't have it. I think there are times where HR can and should communicate the message, and they don't necessarily need to involve internal comms. Maybe that's the wrong thought, but I don't think every department says, oh, I need to do this today and I need to communicate with people. Let me go see internal comms. So I guess the expectation that we involve internal comms in everything might be a little bit of a rub, but I think we can do a better job of appreciating what they can bring to the table and sometimes bringing them in maybe when they don't have to be the messenger, but they can help us refine our message because they have skills that we don't. So I think there's room for appreciation on both sides.
Right. And Chuck, what's your take on that question? Are you in agreement? I see some nodding.
I'm in agreement that IC should absolutely have a say in ultimately what gets shared. It's literally in our title. It's literally right there. I'm not saying we should have full approval. I'm not saying that we have, but we absolutely should have a say in what goes out. Yes, absolutely.
Super. Thank you both. Let's hope the questions keep spicing things up. I've got another question here. During the COVID pandemic, some HR teams have absorbed internal comms teams and are still reluctant to revert. What's the perception about this? Should internal comms be part of HR or not? My personal view, this is from Giles, is that internal comms does not equate to HR information only. Chuck, what do you think when we've got teams that have come together and want to revert, haven't done so? What do you think? Where should they sit in the business?
It's not the end. Oh, I hate this question, Georgie. I don't like this question where they sit in a business. Well, I've got it now. I don't like it when IC sits inside HR. I understand why people would move it there. I actually think the best spot for internal comms is its own. Like I mentioned before, like a chief communications officer, having that go up in parallel with your external comms. Second to that would be like a CMO from a marketing side, because I think that helps bring in more creativity and more data into the internal comms world. So it's not the end of the world if IC is part of HR. I just don't think that's the ideal spot for it.
Thank you, Chuck. Jennifer, how about you? What do you think?
I think a lot of it depends on the size of the organization. I mean, IC may have beef if they report into HR, but HR has beef if they report into finance. But in some small organizations, maybe they do. Everybody wants to report to the CEO ultimately because they believe our department, has that level of responsibility. But I think I saw in the chat, and somebody mentioned that Chuck references the chat more than me, and that says something. I'm like, what? I've been saying stuff about the chat.
There's that chip on your shoulder again, Jennifer. You got to knock that off.
But I did see in the chat, someone said HR feels like they own the employee experience and culture, and everybody does. Well, the truth of the matter is, yes, I would advocate that everybody owns culture, but HR is the culture champion. HR is the champion of employee experience, and it's often on their dashboard or their scorecard where measurements are communicated, and we're responsible for collecting that data. So If internal comms reports into HR, I'm not offended by that because I do think it's part of the employee experience, which again, I'm leading often from a human resources standpoint. I don't feel like it's my responsibility, and I do need to involve everyone, but I'm often the one that's tasked with it. So if internal comms reports into HR, I'm not offended.
Well, that's good. I think we get this question a lot, and every organization is just so wildly different. So it's really great to hear your opinions, and I'd love to know, in the chat where you're all sitting. Are those teams together? Are they not?
Notice we never ask where HR sits, though Jennifer did bring up a good point about it could be under finance. And I wanted to point out that's the underdog reporting structure, in my opinion. The comms teams that I know that have reported to the CFO have a lot of times been the most successful and, shocker, most well-funded. Because guess who's closest to the budgets? The CFO. Yeah. Guess who admits typically they're not very good at comms? CFOs. So they tend to let teams do what they do best, and then they just control the money. And it's good to be close to the money. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah. Saying that as a marketeer, I'm like, absolutely, yep. We've got another question here. HR in my organization can sometimes view IC as the email sender versus a strategic partner. Jennifer, what are your thoughts on HR wanting IC to just hit send? And then Chuck, what have you done to become more of a strategic partner? So Jennifer, heading to you first on thoughts about IC, thoughts on HR just wanting IC to hit send.
I guess after this therapy session, I'm going to try to do better. I may have viewed IC in that way in the past that, we've already done all this work. Here's the message. Now just have it come out and go through your channels. But I want to do better in the future about bringing internal comms in earlier and maybe getting to where we both feel like it's the right time to hit send.
There we go. This has been a healthy session. And Chuck,
from Tiffany.
And Chuck, how about you? There's a question about what have you done to position yourself, your team as a more strategic partner, so not just a hit send function? Or I
think we have to be a little self-aware here. We have to self-reflect and be like, why do they see us as just the sender? Why do they see us as just that, being able to paste it into somewhere and hit send and target the audience? Like how have we sort of devalued our own presence? And so again, that's where we need to build that partnership. We need to reach out. Anytime I've been successful, I've said this before in presentations, like collaboration is a drug for me. I enjoy that. I thrive on that. I think through collaboration, you have your best projects out there. And so seek to collaborate. Don't seek to get answers all the time. Seek to collaborate, seek to build. And I think then you're not just seen as the sender.
Absolutely. And do you think you've been successful at trying to do that when you've had, large HR teams, large internal comms teams? Because I think it's easier maybe in a smaller organization, but how have you found that in large organizations?
Regardless of the size of the teams, it still comes down to those one-on-one relationships. It's that, is there trust there? It's hard to have trust between teams. It's easier to have trust between individuals. So the more individuals you trust on that team, the more likely you are to trust the team. So look to build those one-on-one relationships.
Super. So my last question to you both before we wrap up today is, what is your next step going to be to better collaborate? Maybe another therapy session. But Jennifer, what's your next step going to be?
I'm going to intentionally make myself view internal comms more as a partner rather than a resource. I think that's good for all of us, with all of the counterparts that we work with, but it is easy to view internal comms as a resource to HR often, and I want to view them more as a partner and, again, someone to collaborate with.
Super. Thanks, Jennifer. And Chuck, what's yours?
Yeah, I'm going to think very tactically on this. And it was an idea that popped in my head as we were sitting here chatting through this and going through our therapy session. With thank you, Georgie, for guiding us on this journey today. It's that I represent a powerful internal comms community. Jennifer represents a powerful HR community. We need to come together. We need to partner. and bring those communities together to showcase, like, well, here's what really happens when we all get aligned. I think that's the real opportunity here. I happen to love the city of Cincinnati, where Jennifer's based, so I don't know, maybe we do something there. But I think it's truly an opportunity as voices in this space to actually come together to help guide. No different than I talked about how you want your leaders to be aligned. People like Jennifer and I should be aligned as well.
Absolutely. What a lovely tone we are finishing our therapy session on today. And I also think we've got lots of other therapy sessions potentially in the wings, because, I think there's been a lot of chat about how we work with IT, because, we work with lots of major stakeholders across the business, not just HR and IC. So stay tuned. Maybe we'll have some more therapy. So I've got one final poll of the day. I would love to know how you've all found this session. I'm so sorry we haven't got to everybody's questions. We will do our absolute best to follow up with those. And I just wanted to let you know that there's more great events like this to join in, which is the next one coming up is No Email, No Problem. We see a lot of issues in organizations with frontline employees not having email addresses, and how do you reach and connect with those people? So join us, or we'll be really getting into the weeds talking about Don't You Worry, because we solve all things frontline disconnection. And lastly, I've got a question for another piece of homework that I set Jennifer and Chuck, which was we're building a playlist, which is a bit of a survival playlist actually for internal comms leaders. But Jennifer, all things people experience, you are welcomed into the playlist today. I would like you to submit a track that we can add to our playlist. So Chuck, what would your song be?
So a lot of people might suspect, and I'm guilty of this, that I would recommend a Duran Duran song, which would be my go-to. But I'm going to do something different here. I'm going to go with A New Style by Beastie Boys.
Oh, okay. Love. Thank you so much. We'll get that on the playlist. And Jennifer, what would your track be?
Let's go old school with Why Can't We Be Friends?
Oh, love. But you are friends. And we've got some suggestions in the chat as well. We've got Coldplay. Just Coldplay. Coldplay.
Yeah, I saw Coldplay mentioned a little bit earlier, and we don't need to bring that into this therapy session and point out that it was a CHRO, not the CCO, but
No.
Good shout out for the Coldplay thing.
A whole other therapy session, that one. Amazing. Everybody, thank you for being such an active part of today's event. Chuck, huge thank you. Jennifer, huge thank you. I think it's been very cathartic. We've aired lots of grievances. We've talked through some things. Obviously, there's a long list of questions we haven't got to, so we'll try our best to get to those. But thank you both so much. This has been great. I've really enjoyed myself. I hope you have too. And for everyone that's joined us, we'll hope to see you again on another Blink event, if not online, then in person over the next couple of months. So take care and have a lovely rest of your week.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.